Coming up on The W Show, the state of the game is on the agenda this week. Who are the contenders to take out this year's AFLW Best and Fairest? Plus, we unpack a couple of crunch games in the race for the 8 with Bulldog star Ellie Blackburn. You're watching The W Show, thanks to NAB. Great to have your company. We have a star-studded lineup for you on this week's edition of The W Show. As always, award-winning journalist Sarah Black is with me. Sarah, have you recovered after midweek footy?
I have recovered and I'm so excited. Nat, 3 weeks left of the home and away season. It's going to get really tight.
I am pumped. Also joining us is Bulldogs star Ellie Blackburn, who is missing a shoe still.
I know, I'm still missing a shoe, unfortunately. So excuse the sock for the show today.
That's okay, we'll allow it.
It's great to be here.
It's great to see you. Now, today you came in on crutches. I was a little bit disappointed because when I saw you on Friday night, you had your little scooter.
I did have my little scooter. I mean, it's been quite eventful having the scooter. It was all decked out. It had the crochet, the horn and the streamers and everything in between and the basket, which has been very handy. But no, I thought it'd be maybe a little bit more professional coming in on crutches today.
You are so very professional. How long do you think you're going to still have to be on crutches or the scooter for?
I think still a couple more weeks like this, unfortunately. So, and then, yeah, we'll see where we go from there.
Well, fingers crossed you can at least get a shoe on in the next couple of weeks.
Would be nice.
All right, well, 3 weeks to go until finals. As Sarah Black mentioned, it is a very exciting time. It's still a wide open race as we take a look at the live ladder. The Roos remain unbeaten on top. The Hawks continue to soar. Brisbane and Adelaide round out the top 4, but the Crows are no certainties to finish with the double chance after a little stumble last week against the Dees. And then from 6th to 11th, you can see there is a bit of a logjam. And Sarah, are we putting a line through the Cats now?
I think we are mathematically still in the mix, and you never want to hear that word mathematically in terms of the race for finals.
Put a line through them.
But they do have Adelaide and Brisbane to come, as well as West Coast and Perth.
So Fremantle are in 6th place at the moment. They're 5 and 3, but they blew a massive chance when it comes to securing a double chance come finals. A shock loss to Carlton. They led Ellie by 10 points at 3/4 time, and this could come back to haunt them.
Yeah, it really could, unfortunately, for Fremantle's perspective with it all. And, you know, with a late goal to Shearer in the game, it makes it really hard. And it's just one of those moments where you're like, oh, if you had your time again, you change a couple of things in it. But I have no doubt that they'll review that game extremely well and look to bounce back as a result of it.
So they have the Eagles, Sarah, to come. That's a massive game, Giants and Dogs.
Yeah, so they're all eminently winnable games. Keep your eye on Hayley Miller in terms of selection this week. She was a late withdrawal from that loss to Carlton with a calf complaint. So she's such a strong performer for them. So I think, her coming into the side might help them just get over the line in the Derby.
So Sarah, the real dark horse for mine is Melbourne. So yes, they are 11th. They're just percentage out of the top 8 at the moment. It is about 40%. So it's a large gap to make up, but certainly against the Saints at the weekend, the cavalry and the star power certainly is coming back.
For sure. They're looking so much more settled now that they have closer to their best 21 on the park. Liv Purcell, Paxi Paxman and Eden Zanker came back for this game. They were absolutely enormous. The inclusion of Purcell really helped Tyler Hanks shine through. She wasn't having to carry that huge load by herself through the middle of the ground. Paxi's such a strong veteran, provides so much support. And Eden Zanker, Ellie, it is really important for that structure forward of footy.
I think so. And it's not only those things that you're talking to in terms of like a skill acquisition point of view, but in terms of games played and experience out there as well to help continue to lead their side. These players have got so much experience in games played that they're going to help their team grow and hopefully for their sake win more games of footy.
So while the anticipation and excitement as we head into finals should really be taking centre stage, it is unfortunate that the state of the game has been a huge topic of conversation, and there have been some really ugly headlines that have circulated this week in the world of W, and the future of the competition has been fiercely debated. A large part of this conversation comes off the back of midweek footy, which finished up at the weekend. We discussed that last week on the show, and some of it, Ellie, is a result of a game played on Friday night between the Dogs and the Bombers. All 3 of us were there, and it's fair to say for the 4,000 fans, it was a hard watch.
Yeah, there's no doubt in saying that, fans want to come to the footy and see plenty of goals kicked. And that's what, from a player's perspective as well, you'd love to see more of. And I have no doubt too, from a coach's perspective, you don't go to games and not aim to kick goals at at those moments or in those games.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to score when you can, and unfortunately we weren't able to do that. There's no doubt we weren't trying to. We were definitely trying to kick goals. You don't go into a game and not plan to,
No.
but unfortunately it was the way the game panned out that it was quite a defensive game, and not a lot of goals were scored.
How much did midweek footy, do you think, and the fatigue potentially play into that at all? I mean, the Bombers, for example, were playing their 4th game in 15 days, and your teammates as well had been in that compressed fixture as well. Did fatigue play a part in that?
I think fatigue definitely has a part to play in all of this. I mean, midweek footy is something new. I mean, there's players that a handful of years ago we were talking before about COVID, that in that year there was condensed footy, but a lot of the players, particularly from our point of view at the Bulldogs, weren't part of that experience, so they don't know what it's like. And so it was different. So I'd definitely say it had an element to it for sure.
Sarah, what did you make? I mean, you were there, you were doing the match report for AFL.com.au. Do you think there was an overreaction to the defensive nature of the game, in particular the way the Bulldogs played with dropping 1, 2, sometimes 3 players behind the ball?
I think we need to separate the reaction because it's twofold. There's this game itself. Let's be real, there are so many stinkers in the men's. I barrack for Richmond. I watched so many poor Tigers games this year in the men's. This was not good. We're not messing around the bush here. I'm not convinced this is a winning style of game to play, to have so many players behind the ball and then not be able to utilise all those extra numbers behind the ball. I think that's one side of the argument. The other is then people use that as an opportunity to dig into the AFLW and where it's at. There's no questioning the fact this is a pertinent point in the future of this competition. And, there's been some really considered pieces of writing that's been out there, and I've really enjoyed, the variety of views and the calls on, the need for a really strategic plan going forward. There's also been an element of let's pile on here, and I think everyone knows who I'm talking about when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really frustrated me, is that you get people who might tune into AFLW every once in a while or be drawn to the fact that there was a game that wasn't all that good at the weekend, and they watch that and then they're very, very critical of it without knowing the full complexities and the nuances. From your point of view as a player, Ellie, do you mind the talk even though it is slightly negative?
Yeah, obviously it hates to be the first punching bag when it comes to this, unfortunately, from our perspective. But in saying this is something players have asked for, and there's no shame in hiding that by any means, is that we want criticism of the game. We want honest opinions, honest analysis from whether it's media personalities or from coaches or from other players, whatever that looks like. But there needs to be fair opinions when it comes to it. You need to have the full picture and understanding of it. From our point of view, we had so much experience on the sidelines. So we had over 200 games of experience sitting on the sidelines. We had the 4th youngest team field the side in the history of AFLW come Friday night. So these are all factors as to why the game probably panned out the way it did, and why the game plan and style was the way it was in order to sort of be competitive and play against a team that we thought scored highly. So these are all contributing factors. But in saying it, I don't hate that the game's been spoken about like this. I mean, it's great to have the conversation. It's great that more people are talking about it, that there's more eyes on the game, and we're not talking about it in a way of, oh, it's great that the girls are having a go. Yeah. We're analysing the game for what it is, and for that I respect and appreciate.
Before we delve a little bit deeper into this, let's take a listen to what the 2 coaches had to say after Friday night.
Disappointed. I think we did a lot of things right in the first 3 quarters, especially defensively. The game looked how we wanted it to look pre-game.
Probably was surprised in the second quarter when they had the win that they were still putting numbers back in our defence. So that sort of told us pretty clearly that that's what they wanted to do, and really sort of clog up our ability to score.
So, Ellie, I'm keen to understand Tam Hyatt and the coaching staff's thinking behind this game plan, because obviously the players executed the game plan, but is there a bigger picture as to why this is the way that the club is going that maybe we're not aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always a reason as to why coaches coach the way they do. And from our perspective, like I mentioned, we had a lot of experience on the sidelines, so we had to change things up. And for us, we're in a phase of educating our team. We've got a very young, inexperienced list, as I mentioned, and so we've got to teach different ways to learn to play the game and different ways to learn on how to defend the game. Saying this, we definitely didn't go into the game being like, let's just stop them from scoring, put numbers behind the footy, and that's the way the game's going to pan out. There was every intention for our team to go out there and score. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. And maybe parts of it is the way the game panned out. Well, obviously that's the way it panned out. But yeah, I think we went into the game trying to score. The way it ended up being was we unfortunately didn't kick a goal, but we learn a way of how to defend in a tight situation. So these are different tools and ways that we're going to learn and grow as a team. And I have no doubt that this experience has been a lot for our players and our coaching staff.
So the question is, do the coaches have some responsibility when it comes to the state of the game discussion and the creation of a product that is entertaining for fans and for players and the like? And for Melbourne coach Mick Stanier, the answer is a clear yes.
From my point of view, yeah, you've got to give the team best possible chance of winning. But then you've got to manage the team as well, like the team's love of the game and their passion and enjoyment, and bring out their spirit as well. So that's what you've got to grapple with. You've got a responsibility to for the fans to come to the game and enjoy the footy as well. But yeah, it's a delicate balance to be had with it.
It is a delicate balance, isn't it, Sarah? And it's not just, coaches, obviously, players, but the AFL as an organisation and also the media play a role.
For sure, and I think, Mick's hit the nail on the head there. There are so many layers to it, and I really liked the point of you've got to make your footy fun for your players too. They want to be there and have a really good time. I think it's interesting that a lot of the coaches who really espouse this way of playing are some of the most experienced coaches around. So Craig Starcevich, Scott Gowans is one who has been really open about his desire to play a free-flowing, attractive brand of footy. And I think Gowans is really interesting because he's taken over a Sydney side. He's building them from the ground up. So that experienced playing list isn't necessarily there, but he's determined to make that happen from the get-go and goes, you know what, if we're going to lose by 70 points, let's go down swinging. Let's learn how to attack from the very outset.
So with midweek footy, scoring wasn't down significantly. The number of players used by teams was also unchanged, essentially, Ellie. Yes, there are other things like, assistant coaches who are working part-time elsewhere and trying to juggle everything, the inability for players and coaches and industry folk to switch off in between 4-day breaks and the like. So we take all of that. As a player, moving forward with the AFL, would you like a little bit more consultation with the players and the AFL when it comes to taking next steps in what the competition looks like in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? We're in this together, aren't we? We're all part of this industry and we all want to help it grow and make it be the best possible product it can be. So why not have more conversations with the AFL and the players and the coaches all involved, because we want to help grow the game. And I agree with what Mick Stanier is saying. I think it's important that, as an industry, we're all in this together and we have a responsibility to be able to grow the game and make it exciting for fans to come in. There's metrics in place for us to grow the game in terms of how many games we play per season. So we've got to make it attractive that fans want to come and watch and be part of. So I think those conversations are definitely helpful moving forward in order to grow the game.
Before we move on, just a quick one, Thursday night. So tonight you play Carlton. Are we going to see a little bit of a change? Because the Bulldogs have not scored a game 3 times this year, which is a first in AFLW history. Can we expect a little bit more aggressive play tonight?
I think the way we reviewed the game is that we want to be able to score. So we've looked at ways and opportunities that we can create that for us and ways that we can open the game up and score. So I dare say things might look potentially a little bit different. And it's not just because of what's been said by any means, but I think we're coming up against a different opposition in Carlton, and the way that they play, that we've worked out a game style that we're going to beat them with. So I think that's more to the point. It has no doubt a knee-jerk reaction to what's been said, but I think the way we played against the likes of a Collingwood and Sydney will come to life a little bit more.
All right, so Ellie, you're going to get ready for the deep dive, but with 3 rounds to go in the home and away season, we are getting closer to crowning our AFLW Best and Fairest for 2024. Sarah, as we take a look at the AFLCA votes after 8 weeks, or 8, it's not really 8 games, is it? It's 7 weeks?
7 weeks, 8 games.
8 games, there you go. That's what we've got to, but no surprises there. Ebony Marinoff's leading the way.
Yeah, she's rocketed to the lead recently on the back of the Crows played the back half of their condensed fixture, so she's played quite a bit of footy recently. She's in excellent touch, and I think what's most interesting about Eb this year is that Anne Hatchard's had a good season, not an outstanding season, and so many times over the years these two have not stolen the votes, they've shared the votes between them.
No, they've stolen them off each other.
So it begs the question, is this finally Ebony Marinoff's year?
Okay, well, it's a very good question and one that maybe Gemma Bastiani might be able to answer for us in the deep dive. Gem, who is your pick for the best and fairest?
The race for the 2024 AFLW Best and Fairest is heating up, Ellie. But what we've picked out is one sure thing and one smoky. So who are we going to kick it off with, Ellie?
Ebony Marinoff, I think she's the obvious one at the moment. And if we have a look at her season averages in terms of a stats point of view, I mean, she's averaging career best stats across the board this season. In particular, her disposals, 30.9 disposals this season, which is huge. But her inside 50s, I think, is probably one of the most important ones, averaging the 6.6 this season as well.
It's also wild to think that Ebony Marinoff's always been so good, and these are career best numbers. She keeps getting better. We've got an example as to why. It's her work rate, isn't it?
It is her work rate, and she loses her opponent at stoppages. As we have a look here, she's obviously getting a tag, and most weeks and most games she's getting a run with player, but she tries to find Parker, which is the opposition's best player, but just continually moving through stoppages to lose her opponent and get plenty of the footy like this.
That kick inside is to the perfect spot as well. So she's got really good connection with her forwards too. But here's an example of work rate. So we want to watch the number 10 Guernsey. So she starts up here. The ball goes inside 50, but she doesn't stop and just let that happen. She actually keeps running. So her ability to come back in and then tick back up as a lead isn't actually a genuine lead. It's just to open up this space for another forward to run into.
It is, and it shows the selflessness of her in terms of this role, particular this year for her. She's now a captain of this football club. So she's been able to step up in terms of a captaincy point of view. So she just works hard, gets out of the space, opens it up for her teammates, allowing moments like this for the likes of, you know, Ponta and Gould in their forward line and many other players coming through those leading patterns. But then in return, she finds plenty of the footy herself because she's constantly working throughout the course of the game.
Yeah, so it's those little movements that she does when she knows that she's actually not going to get on the end of it, but she's so important at drawing players out of that space, create it for others. Now our Smoky.
Yes.
Who's our Smoky?
We've gone with Ella Roberts for our Smoky. I think this season for her, West Coast are winning more games of footy and she's just getting more of the footy herself. And we have a look at these stats here, Jem, and it's the 20.8 disposals, plenty of metres game with over 300 there in terms of an average this season. But her contested marks, which is a real highlight of her game, which is right up there with the league's best. But she's also hitting the scoreboard as well, which is one of the stats we haven't even put up on the screen.
Yeah, so she's kicked the 5 goals this year so far, playing midfield forward. But again, it's work rate. Work rate is everything. So we see here, Ella Roberts is up at the stoppage. So she starts at the stoppage and then things roll. There's a free kick given. Matilda Schultz unfortunately gets into Sasha Goranova's back. But as soon as Goranova's up, it's Ella Roberts, who's spread forward, gotten away from her direct opposition, finds space inside 50. So it's that quick decision-making that's so important.
Yeah, she's clearly got incredible football smarts and brains and knowledge to be able to run those patterns and know that if she can lose her opponent in transition in that way, she's able to get the footy herself, and particularly inside forward 50. Why wouldn't you want Ella Roberts taking those marks?
Yeah, and what's important as well is that it's not just forward, it's defensively as well. So again, she started up at this stoppage, free kick is given against, she loses her opponent going back into the D50. And then this one, contested marking, is so good. Not bad from Belinda Smith there. But up against Ange Foley, who's a tough oppo, she does the body work to make sure she's in the right position, doesn't she?
Yeah, Ange Foley's probably one of the hardest one-on-one opposition players that you can come up against. So for Ella Roberts, just so early in her career to know to be able to use her body in that way and to be so strong overhead, I think it's so impressive to watch her go at it this season. I think one of the young guns up and coming, and she's going to be incredible for years to come. But then you've got Ebony Marinoff at the other end, who's still relatively young in terms of age and her football career as well, who are going to be incredible players for years to come, but have had standout seasons this year.
So we think Marinoff will win it. We think Roberts might go close. They're both fun to watch. Let's see what they do this weekend.
Yeah, they certainly are. Thanks to Gemma as Ellie hobbles her way back over here. Sarah, you mentioned this on the Credit to the Girls podcast earlier in the week, but if we rewind the clock back to 2017, a fresh-faced Ebony Marinoff is a rising star winner. Come full circle.
Certainly, she was not a runaway winner, but she was certainly like a really strong performer in that very first season. What I've loved about Eb is how she's developed her game over the years. So, you know, her biggest attribute in that very first season was her tackling game. She was so strong around the contest, and now she's a real, genuine two-way midfielder. So, you know, she's come in leaps and bounds.
Speaking of leaps and bounds, you like hopped your way back here. Sorry about that.
I feel like the Pixar lamp at the moment with the hopping I'm doing.
I love that. Nice little Disney plug too. Let's take a look at the Week 8 fixture and what is to come. Of course, Thursday night footy tonight is Ellie's Bulldogs up against Carlton. Friday night between Port Adelaide and St Kilda is a massive one in the context of the finals race. And Sarah, the Western Derby on Saturday night. Be keeping a close eye on this one.
Derby.
Yep.
I'm going to be keeping my eye more specifically on Ash McCarthy in that game. Former Eagle turned Docker. She is in excellent form.
Yeah, you know her well, actually. Ellie used to play with her at the Doggies. Several intriguing games this weekend. We have chosen, you can see there, the Melbourne and Richmond game. Sorry, that's on Saturday night, but that is a real intriguing clash that I want to dig a little bit deeper into. We spoke about Melbourne already. The Tigers are still in touch with the top four, Sarah, and I did ask you earlier in the season, did you think the Tigers were a real deal? And you were on the fence about it.
No, I'm pretty sure I said no.
Okay, fine,
Yeah.
you said no. There you
More
go.
so, I think the Tigers are genuinely in the mix for that fourth spot.
Yep.
Whether they can compete against the top three sides, I'm still not sold on.
Well, when it comes to their skipper in Katie Brennan, Ellie, I mean, she was absolutely clutch at the weekend. She kicked this goal from outside 50. It was just ridiculous.
I mean, she's incredible the way that she's been able to go about it this season, and it's probably the best her body's been. But this goal in particular, I mean, this was late in the game. I was at the game commentating, and all you could hear was Ryan Ferguson on the bench just yelling at her, like screaming, pleading, if anything, to not play on and take it. But she just did what she does best, and that was go back and kick the goal with so much confidence. And I mean, she's having an outstanding season, and she was great again on the weekend.
Well, let's take a look at that goal again. And this time we've got Ryan Ferguson, I believe, in the audio.
30 starts now! It only starts now! Take it! Maybe wait! Wait!
I wonder if she actually heard him or she just knew that she needed to just hold back a little bit.
I reckon she probably did hear him. He was that loud, and it was so obvious that he was yelling out. But I mean, why not back yourself in? I mean, good on her for doing it. I applaud her.
What have you been impressed when it comes to the Tigers and I guess how they've played in this sort of last